in, and hopefully next year we'll be on television more as well, so we'll be able to take advantage of that as well. But yeah, interesting times at a couple of the semi-professional clubs there for certain.
Speaking of administration news,
the
Tongan National Rugby League, that's the TNRL, has been suspended by the RLIF, that's the Rugby League International Federation, after its fallout with the players and coaches. Tonga are due to play Great Britain in Hamilton on October the 26th, but the RLIF say they are hopeful of finding an interim arrangement with the Tongan government and key stakeholders to ensure the international calendar goes ahead as planned. I mean, is this the most rugby league story possible, that we have a good news story 2 years ago in Tonga and how they developed and how they managed to retain the players rather than losing them to New Zealand or Australia, and then they managed to put a colossal hole in their collective foot and just completely piss it all out the wall?
Well, it's only the same as what Fiji have managed to do several times over the last decade or so, isn't it? Now Tonga are kind of at that level where the people who run it domestically aren't really the right people to be running an organised group.
There's so many tier 2 nations, unfortunately. You look at Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. It's not just a Southern Hemisphere problem, and I don't think it's right to couch in that. I think Northern Hemisphere governing bodies are just as small-minded, small interest, and they're only there because they're mates with someone else.
Both Italy and the USA have had this inability to kind of get on between the domestic sport and the governing body of the international sport. I think both countries maybe have mended those fissures themselves now. Certainly USA feels like they have, but it has always happened, hasn't it, in international rugby league, where people can't quite manage that transition to the top table.
Yeah, and there's definitely.
How do you think this is going to get resolved?
Well, that's the problem. It's either you go back to the previous board and you lose the players, or you go with the new board effectively and through the government. You keep the players, but you lose all the infrastructure. So it's a real tricky one from looking from the outside. I suspect
they're going to keep the players and lose the infrastructure, because how deeply entrenched was the infrastructure anyway, and how well was that developing anyway?
Yeah, I know a little bit about sort of Tonga and Tongan society from a friend of mine who's married to a Tongan, and yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it's chaotic in some ways, but equally they'll probably have a meeting about it and sort it out, is my hope. But yeah, it's just a shame because it's such an opportunity for them.
It's an opportunity for the sport, isn't it? And it's an opportunity for national pride within Tonga as well.
And that's why. And then the performance of 2 years ago is why they've earned this test effectively. Why this test is going to happen.
Yeah.
And probably, if we're being realistic about it, it's why the Great Britain tour is there. The Great Britain tour in the form it's in is there because of that performance and how the players came together and worked together. And it may be in spite of the board. Yeah. That's why that tour is in that form. So
the games with Tonga and PNG are equally as anticipated as the ones with New Zealand, partly because England have played New Zealand every
about 4,000 times
in the last 3 years, but also because of what happened in the World Cup, of the players we've seen out of those sides as well. The fact that the best forward in the world plays for Tonga, that kind of thing. You can't lose that, can you? Otherwise you lose the whole idea of them being a high-tiered nation.
Yeah, exactly. And they've earned the right to be there. It's not that they've not been given it. There's no handouts here. They've earned the right to be there, and then that's why it's such a shame that this could spoil it all.
Yeah, these things tend to get resolved for a short period until
it tends to be brinkmanship, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I think this is going to rumble. We're going to be in and out of these kind of situations for a while, I think, unfortunately. Hopefully someone else can take a grip of it. Maybe the RLIF can take a grip of it themselves and kind of manage the nation themselves, almost for a while, and that might be a way of doing it. But then the people at the RLAF, do we trust them to manage things properly? We've got to. That's a whole other topic that we shall sidestep, Tim.
Yes, well, as long as the right players are playing, who should be playing, and who are rugby league players, that's as much as I'll go into.
Well, we touched on that last week, and we're certainly glad that the RLAF has taken the stance it has on that news story. So, and finally, West Wales back rower Morgan Jeffries has been suspended for 4 years for anti-doping offences. Jeffries, who's 23, played for Wales in the 2018 Commonwealth Championships and has been with the Raiders since 2014. He tested positive for two prohibited substances, including a metabolite of cocaine, following the game against London Scholars in February. Jeffries will be banned until February 2023. UKAD's or UKAD's or UK Anti-Doping's Chief Executive Nicole Sapstead said, "It is always concerning when an athlete is found to have prohibited substances in their system, but when more than one substance is found or substances are found on multiple occasions, it is of particular alarm."
I mean, this is, on multiple levels, absolutely bloody disgraceful. Because you can't say, as a 23, he hasn't seen the amount of players in that region that have been banned for drugs. And that region and that club, in its various forms, have got a drugs problem. It's, plain and simple, there is a problem in that area. And it is a wider societal problem in there. There was a documentary on the BBC a couple of years ago about that sort of valleys in particular area, but it sort of extends across Wales, across South Wales, around steroids in particular. But that club, as an entity, have got a problem, and it needs to be sorted out, and it needs to be the RFL and the WRL, because it's their jurisdiction as well. They need to do something here and to stamp this out, because it's getting ridiculous.
It does feel every second story we have about a drug suspension is a player from South Wales, West Wales. That's it. Yeah. It's now.
And it's repeat, and it's the same pattern. They're always about the same sort of age. They're always about the sort of the play you've just about heard of, but not really made it. So there's a clear pattern in there. Now, is that a coaching thing? Is that the coaches aren't saying it's strong enough? Are they putting too much pressure on players?
It's hard to keep tabs on the players when you've got about 45 coming in and going a season and playing 1 week and not playing for 3 weeks and stuff like that, maybe from the coaching standpoint. But there is a culture issue, isn't there, around the club and around the game down there?
Is it from the clubs that they're putting too much pressure on the players, which is forcing them to into this, because they feel like they need the edge, they feel like they need they need this to get in the team? Is that what they feel? Is it that they feel
up every week's enough to get in that team, surely?
Well, you'd think, but is it the way of the things going that because they're losing, they want any advantage, and that's no matter what the cost? And is it then that as a result of that, the following year they bring in a few Australian players for 5 games, and that then puts more pressure on those local players to try and meet that standard? Does that cycle keep repeating itself, and does that force it in some way? I mean, there's got to be an answer somewhere.
Different tack that isn't necessarily a problem for the club, or a problem with the club the way they're conducting themselves. It's still a problem with the culture within the club, but maybe players are pumping themselves up to try and get noticed, so then they can move on to a club that actually might be a bit more of a stepping stone to a career, and they're not thinking about it obviously the right way, and they're not going about it the right way, because some of these players have moved on from South Wales in the past, haven't they, and then been caught as well. It's not just when they've been at South Wales, it's sometimes been former South Wales players or West Wales players as well. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about kind of the behaviours of the players, of the individuals down there, the monitoring of it. It is a concern because it's repeatedly, like you say, that area that comes up in these news stories.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be action, and maybe it is threatening the club. Maybe it's saying, look, your league membership is at risk, or your central funding will be docked if you keep having this, because it's just not acceptable. It's not excusable, and it's just repeated, and it's like someone somewhere just isn't learning what's going on here to stop this happening again.
No, it's certainly an issue that needs to be addressed very seriously, because, like we say, every second story feels like it's about someone down in the south or west of Wales. Right. Okay, mixed bag in the news there. We're now going to move on to two pretty consistently dominant home performances as we move on to the Super League match reviews. So, Super League match reviews then. It was the second week of the playoffs. We've got the second eliminator match to talk about first, where the loser went home and the winner stays in. It was over at the AJ Bell Stadium. It was 22-0 in the end to Salford Red Devils. It was 14-0 at half time. The crowd figure reported for this is 4,800, and Ben Thaler was the match visual. There's certainly a very good band of Castleford fans on that far touchline, and as always the shed was full and loud for Salford. In terms of the stats, they were mostly quite close actually. Both teams had good defensive numbers with only 3 breaks made by each side, and both having over 90% tackle success rate. Cass actually were the slightly better side for metre numbers, but Salford were the cleaner side with and especially without the ball. 1 fewer error made, 4 fewer penalties conceded, and fewer missed tackles too from the Red Devils. Individually, Josh Jones...
So what I'm hearing is dirty Cass. Is that correct?
I think what we're hearing is clean Salford. It is a fairer way to express it. I mean, take from it as you will, of course, but I think it's more a plus on Salford's end, this one. I'd love it to be the other way. Josh Jones, 7 tackle bus, 164 metres. Josh Griffin, 50 tackles. Krishnan Inu, 5 tackle bus and 130 metres. And Ken Seo, 128 metres. For Cass, Jordan Rankin had 171 metres, Greg Eden had 165 metres on his return to the side. Liam Watts, 54 tackles, 11 of which were marker tackles, and 5 offloads. He certainly heads into the international camps in great form. And Paul McShane, 50 tackles, 19 of which were marker tackles. I wonder if that's a typo. That's a big number.
That is a lot.
Yeah, anyway. In terms of the fan views, do you want to take us through the first of those?
Yes, Roger the cabin boy. Ha 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 ha.
I'm sure you could have kept going on there for that one. Obviously, Roger found something.
I counted them out.
Amusing. Oh no! I deleted a load because it was making the box on the sheet go all over the place. So. There's about basically every character you can put was filled up with that for Roger. Carsten said, Evold's try-saving tackle was an absolute highlight and Castleford never looked to win the game. I'm not sure if that wasn't Salford's grand final because it was an outstanding performance in defence and offence. The 2 mistakes of the refereeing team didn't make a difference, but I can smell the ref's fault. Salford winning the grand final before the wire is an interesting thought though.
There's a part of me that wants that to happen now.
Well, if they win on Friday, there'll be a big part of me that wants it to happen. But anyway,
yeah. Cutthroat Jake says that Tuli Lolohea looks good. If only Leeds could sign someone like that.
POB 1976. Paul says a great performance from Salford, who thoroughly deserved the win. Castleford just couldn't get across the line due to some fantastic defence. Salford will be on a high ahead of next week's game, with Castleford licking their wounds and planning for 2020.
Yeah, and Fatboy_Rob, our resident Cass fan, says rubbish. That is all. #Coys.
St David said, sat amongst the Cass faithful for this one. Salford deserved winners in an entertaining match. The key difference was speed in attack and Cass lacking pace and ideas in the Salford half. Maybe one game too far for them. Salford will give Wigan a good game on Friday.
Yeah, and Tom Andrews rounds us off on your views by saying,